Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Tompsett, and tonight I'm joined by my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
What's up, my man? I'm a rejuvenated man. The loss. I've watched the tape. I've cleansed myself. I've meditated. I've done all kinds of yoga and stuff like that. And I'm totally clear of that and ready to go on to KC, man.
Me too. I'm past it, and I think that it's not that I'm dismissing it or that I'm trying to say that it didn't suck, because it did. But I did come to full realization that it's still one game. It's just one game, and that, I get it that some of the things in the fourth quarter where the score got away from us are going to skew a bunch of things in point differential and in a lot of metrics and in things like DVOA and stuff like that. And people just have to be aware of that there's noise in those things. That was not a 42-16 game, but we got our butts handed to us either way. And whether it was really, a 10-point loss or a 28-point loss, it doesn't matter. We weren't right there ready to take it. We got our butts handed to us. And I hope that we learn from it, and I hope that we move on. There are a lot of great examples of championship caliber teams. We talked about the Chiefs last year. You talked about we're on to Cincinnati game from New England. These things happen to good teams, and that's okay. And now I'm ready to be okay with it.
And here, one thing here before we fully move on, I think the one thing we learned the most, at least me, is this guy, Josh Allen, is a true leader. You saw him clapping hands with everybody at the end. Kim Jones asked Brian Dable about it this week, saying, she's covered the league for a long time and has never seen a quarterback say "I" as much and take responsibility so openly and just take it on the chin for every time the Bills have any type of struggles. That stuff, just for me, a culture kind of guy, oozes. So I think baked into a tough loss is the maturity of Josh Allen and what a true leader he really is. And I think that's a huge thing going forward for any adversity they face going down the road.
100%. And I think that it's outstanding to be able to look at what they're doing with, you talked about his "I" comments. He put the entire defensive performance on him. I can't put our defense in that kind of position. I can't make a turnover like that. We had some momentum going. They got us a stop, and I messed it up. I can't make plays like that. All those things. It's just unbelievable when you have someone doing that and you see a defense that they know that they didn't play well. They know that it wasn't a great game. And instead of, some of those side-eye comments and some of those crappy things that you see other quarterbacks play or shuck responsibility, instead, he certainly was not the reason we lost that game. It wasn't his best game. He wasn't why we lost that game. And yet he still took responsibility. Those guys noticed that. And it's why they'll go the unbelievable extra mile for him.
Yep. Yeah. And guys around the league notice it too. So when it comes up to players, obviously we didn't get Le'Veon Bell here this week. I don't know if we're going to talk about that or not, but players around the league do notice it. Buffalo's on people's radars.
So I guess that's a good lead in that, tonight's show sponsored by Uncle Jumbo's. We appreciate it. We'll talk about some of our other sponsors as we get going here. The team that we are playing, the Kansas City Chiefs, did get Le'Veon Bell. Just for any fan who's not aware, Le'Veon Bell was released by the New York Jets. Dabbled back and forth. It sounded like pretty close with Miami, Buffalo, and Kansas City. Ended up signing with Kansas City. Based on the COVID protocol, he is not going to be eligible to play Monday night. So hopefully we will deal with that in the playoffs, where hopefully I think it's very possible that we play the Kansas City Chiefs at some point again. So he will not be playing against us on Monday, but we will play the rest of this Kansas City Chiefs team. And Aaron, just what are some of your first thoughts as you started to get ready for these defending Super Bowl champions?
They're super good at football. They really are. They're a tough team, but they're flawed. I think that there's this idea out there, and you sort of touched on it a little bit in our post-game show, and we've been touching about it a little bit on Twitter, that this is some unstoppable team. And when you look at them last year, I think the run they went on was great at the end of the year, but they had a hiccup like the Bills did, and they dropped back-to-back games, and they slid for a little bit without Patrick Mahomes. It wasn't just a clean, totally dominant run through to the Super Bowl. So there's prints on how to beat them. The Raiders showed some blueprints on how to beat them, just as the Titans showed some blueprints on how to beat the Bills. So they're a flawed team. And this is the first time in all the time we've been doing the show in my adult life where I feel like if the Bills are going to get into a shootout with anyone, there's a chance for them to win. And Kansas City, nothing, when I'm watching them on film, nothing screams, this is going to be a shootout, like watching their defense. I think that the offense very much keeps them where they're at as far as the, being in first place and being who they are in the league. It's primarily offensive driven. They can make some splash plays. They can get you in trouble and make some toxic differential type plays on defense. But I think that there's a lot that this Brian Daboll, Josh Allen led offense can expose and really get into a shootout. And I don't hate our chances in a shootout. I really don't.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think they are a good team. I think they are very arguably the best team in the NFL. I think that, no one has them lower than the second or third best team in the league, and they are probably rightfully the best team in the league. It's easy when they're coming off a loss to start poking holes. They are not an invincible juggernaut. They're simply not. Obviously, we beat the Raiders or the Raiders beat them. It's not simple. That's not how the transitive property works in football. But obviously, a flawed team like the Raiders beat them. They're obviously not flawless. They're able to be beat. Now, I think there's some things to be said. I don't think either team is excited to be playing the other one coming off their first loss. Just like Bills fans are not pumped that we're playing them off their first loss. Believe me, Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo are not excited to be playing the Bills off an embarrassing loss like that and to be coming back in that manner. They're not excited about that either. But it is going to take a strong effort. They cannot put up the performance or effort that they did in the last game. And I don't think we're going to see that. I think that you heard all the players talk, I probably similarly to what we did earlier. Let it hurt a little bit, let it burn a little bit. Now we move on. It's one game. We're 4-1. We still have things that we control in our destiny. And that's the kind of language you want to hear them talk about.
Yeah, no, definitely. And they're going to be super focused. I think it would be nicer if we had fans, but there's still an advantage to them having to travel to Buffalo. And here's a question right here. Any updates on Trey, Milano, and Brown? All back at practice. And I tweeted it out. I know Bills fans wanted Le'Veon Bell, but it's bigger to get those guys back. We're getting an all-pro cornerback back, which we saw what happened in the defensive backfield. And I don't know that Trey's been playing at his all-pro level when he is healthy, but without him, things are not good. Getting Matt Milano back is fantastic, huge news. Obviously, you have Travis Kelce coming in. There's weapons that they're using on crossers across the middle. We need Matt Milano. I know people are frustrated with Tremaine Edmonds' struggles. Some of those struggles also come to playing continuity game. He is better when Matt Milano is next to him. They're both better when they are next to each other. There's so much communication that happens between those linebackers. Those two have been playing for so long that even if they're both at 80%, say that is better than anything else we can put on the field. So he's back. John Brown also appears to be back, which we saw what that does to the Bills' ability to stretch the field and kind of get safeties off of Stephon Diggs and make some of those explosive plays that we saw the first 4 weeks. Though we're going to need those plays against the Kansas City Chiefs to stay in a shootout with them. You're going to need some explosive plays to do that. And John Brown has to be on the field for that. Cole Beasley, your zone beater, that's great. We need to get into some of that, but you need John Brown there, even if it's just in a decoy type role of just – you have to respect his ability to go over the top of your defense. So all those guys coming back makes me feel much better about this matchup than I did when I first started digging into it with the unknowns of, hey, if all three of those guys are back, man, this is a really tall task that as good as I think this team is, I don't know that they can do it without those three stars.
Well, and one more thing to add on those three, they were all full participants in practice today as well. So certainly very encouraging sign. It doesn't
mean Feliciano could still be back too. They might be holding that as the lifting his IR designation to the
We should know that late tomorrow. We should know that late on Saturday by 4:00 Saturday. That should be when the designation is made.
To hear that news.
Although I think in theory they can still do that Sunday as well, since it's a Monday game. So either one of them. If we don't hear that tomorrow, it doesn't mean it's 100% out. But we would either hear it tomorrow or Sunday by 4:00. So let's dive in a little bit into this matchup. And one of the things that we've had some people ask, we'll start on the Bills side of it. And one thing I want to use one of our newer sponsors, T-Shirt University. Make sure you guys are going out and check out T-Shirt University, both their store in Buffalo. They're awesome stuff on hand, as well as their website, tshirtuniversity.com. Make sure you're checking out what they have. For tonight's T-Shirt University Fresh Look, it's something that I wanted to be able to kind of look through what we've been seeing. And I saw a couple good tweets. I think Dan Fates had one that was pretty interesting. Josh Allen is actually in the midst of by far his least rushing total of his career. We all know how he started out. Many people, he was more of a rushing threat than he was a passing threat for a good period of time. Over the last 4 games, he's had 19, 8, -1, and 18 yards. And that total, to be in a position to only have 45 total yards, 44 actually with the -1, is, I think, taking away from the threat that he is as a whole. And I don't know how much of that is the shoulder injury. He's still wearing a harness. I do think that there's some subconscious, or at least maybe play calling acknowledgement, probably why we haven't seen some of the called runs. But just a few of the times where maybe on those 3rd and 4s to keep them, on their toes, or to threaten the safeties, some of that stuff that the Titans were able to do by dropping everybody deep and keeping everything in front of them. I'd love if Josh could make them pay for some of that. We didn't see a ton of the screen game to make them pay for that. We didn't see a lot of dump offs or underneath. We didn't see any Cole Beasley till the second half. Another piece of that is Josh Allen pulling the ball down and rushing. And I'm open to the fact that they're protecting him and they don't want him to take those shots. And maybe that's a piece of it. But beyond there, it's just, I'm ecstatic on his development and step forward, passing the ball. That is by far the more sustainable path to success. I don't want it to be either or. I want there to be a little bit. We got into this in the offseason of, hey, how much rushing is too much rushing? We saw a ton of that with the 14, 15 carries in the first game. And I was saying, hey, I'd like a little bit less than that. They went too far. And now we're having 3 or 4 carries. And a couple of those were actually inflated by some kneel downs in the wins. And I'd like to see them mix that back in here. And I think this is the kind of defense that you can take advantage of it with.
Oh, I absolutely think it's the type of defense you can take advantage of it with. One quick thing I want to touch on. I think last week I saw some opportunities to take advantage of it, but they didn't get in the red zone. And I think they want to use at least the design stuff a little bit more in the red zone. He's clearly a weapon using it there. They just weren't in the red zone very much at all, 2 times, and they did score twice. But so I don't know that the opportunities were there. I think a lot of stuff is baked into his decrease, right? The fumbles. We know McDermott has a very, very low tolerance for that. I'm sure after the first game, there was a lot of talk between McDermott, Dable, and Josh Allen about that's unacceptable. Yes, we can still use you as that, but this is super unacceptable. I don't want to see a performance like that again from any of you. So I think that's baked in there a little bit. I think trust in the wide receivers and trust in his offensive line is baked into this a little bit. I think he's getting a nice chunk of time in the passing game. Offensive line might have a little bit of problems in the run game. I don't see a lot of problems in the pass game. And if there is problems, Mitch Morse is cleaning up the problem. So we're not super worried about that. So I think he's getting trust there, and the trust in Diggs. The trust in Cole Beasley and John Brown when he's healthy, I think helps in that too. And obviously Gabe Davis is somebody he's already trusting too. So I think he's keeping his eyes downfield more because he trusts these guys to get open, where his first couple of years, I mean, nobody could get open whether or not he was breaking free or not. I mean, people could have 6 seconds back there and they weren't getting open. So I think a lot of that stuff's baked in. But to your point, Kansas City, when I watch them, I'm not particularly scared of their defense. And we'll talk about some of the numbers of their defense later. There's a few players that concern me, but they're, I think, an overly aggressive defense for the talent that they have. And I think you can get them to bite on some of the read option stuff. I think you can get them in some of the man coverage looks, get some nice running lanes for Josh Allen. And so I think there's going to be some stuff available. The screen game that you brought up is something that I really want to see, because we see with the Bills, they get super aggressive. Tennessee goes the other way with a screen, tight end screen, something like that. I think those types of plays are going to be readily available to the Bills all day, or all evening, I guess, on Monday.
Yeah, I'm going to say night, because it's Monday Night Football, even though 5 o'clock is clearly evening.
It's like competing with Judge Judy, right?
Yeah,
like
the game's going to be done by 8 o'clock. I don't even know how I'm going to do dinner. I don't know. It's a whole thing. So you touched on so many points. So we talked about Josh Allen running the ball. We talked about the screen game. All of those things bake into, we're going to pivot a little bit here. Normally our player spotlight is picking out a Bills player. I think the key to this game is having Brian Dable's game plan of how do you not let Tyrann Mathieu tear up this game? How do you not let him blow it up? He is one of the most instinctual, high IQ, aggressive players in the NFL right now. He plays a lot, in my opinion, like Troy Polamalu used to, where it's, up at the line of scrimmage, timing things like crazy. But the counter to that is he is uber aggressive. So sometimes if you get him to read incorrectly, he lets up big plays, and that you can hit on big plays, either screens over the top of him or seam plays in the seam that he evacuated, in being able to hit on those plays. And it's critical that they have that in mind, because honestly, they have some studs on their defensive line we'll talk about when we break down their numbers, but in their entire back seven, he's the only player that concerns me. And if they need to have a clear plan of how they're going to do that. And I think if Brian Daboll can have a good plan and Josh Allen can execute on that plan, they have a chance to match them score for score.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite players to watch. I love what he does. And the talk about a culture change and a type of player that can change a culture. As soon as he came over to Kansas City, that entire defense got better, and he's the kind of guy that makes players better around you. I don't know that they're not going to be a lights out defense. I don't believe that they're a top 10 defense, even though they have a really good DVOA right now in the year. I'm not sold that they're that, but he actually made them a defense that isn't always going to lose you games, right? Their offense was dragging that defense until Matthews showed up, and he creates plays, he creates havoc, and he gets all those guys to play at a higher level. So he's definitely the most concerning player to me as far as just overall talent on that defense. And I agree with you, though. I think you can use his aggressiveness against him, but it's going to be very difficult to outsmart him. He does have those moments. He's an incredibly intelligent player, and he's rarely not where he's supposed to be, but his aggressiveness does get to him sometimes, and you might be able to get a handle on that, and especially with the wide receivers. I think the Bills, if we're going to get into a shootout, I trust this unit to be one of the most prepared in the league to do that. So I'm interested to see what Daboll does to try to bring him up and get him kind of, if it's some fake screen stuff, and go the other way and try to get some confusion going there, because it's not just him. It's a lot of over aggressive and over pursuing type players on this defense. But when that hits home, dude, they are one of these teams that if they get into a rhythm and start hitting home on some of their over aggressive stuff, they can put you behind the sticks really quick. Like they have pass rushers. They create those toxic turnover plays. Exactly.
And if you give that offense extra possessions, they put you away. And all it takes is, we let up a touchdown. That's all right. We matched it. We let up a touchdown. Oh, that's all right. We matched it. This time we created a turnover and then we scored again. Boom, we're up 14.
Yes. That's what I'd like to see a little more. I know people are frustrated that the Bills are blitzing and that's not getting home, but I like the concept of your offense allows you to be a little bit more aggressive. And yes, you might give up points, but if we can get 2 to 3 possessions where you get the ball back, we think we can win that game that way, right? Like we're going to give up some points, but we're going to create just enough havoc to get our offense the ball back where we think they can score every time we do.
That Raiders second half. It's a perfect example. The Bills did not play a great defensive game in that Raiders game, but they created multiple stops and turnovers in the second half, and we scored every single time. So being able to go through and do that is unbelievable. And I picked the player spotlight because rarely, sometimes there's a guy like Aaron Donald that, of course, I'd love to find a way to put Aaron Donald on our team or things like that.
No, I'm good.
If you gave me a choice of all the players in the NFL, there are a couple that obviously your Donald, your TJ Watts, your Miles
healthy Derwin James.
People like that. Tyrann Mathieu is right up there for me. If you could let me, the way that they use him in the secondary, so they'll have in base plays, Juan Thornhill and him will play safety, but then when they bring in Sorensen, they put him back at safety a lot, and they let Matthew just be this roaming player that he's almost like their nickel. He plays more rundown plays as much as he does coverage plays. They use him like the big nickel that people talk about all the time, even though he's 5'9" and not even 200 pounds. It shows you him, Antoine Winfield Jr., players like that. You don't have to be the Cam Chancellor to be a big nickel. You just have to have that mentality and that skill set. He is a perfect example of that the skill set matters more than just the stereotypical size, and that I'll take a guy like him who's 5'9", 185 but will stick his nose into anything. That's the exact kind of player I wish we had to be able to play around in that middle, in that kind of role someday. To have a guy like that would be a transformational player for this kind of defense.
I also, side note, outside of this game, I love his story because he is the exact story of NFL GMs being too stuck in their preconceived ideas of things and letting maybe not a generational talent, but pretty close to a generational talent just slip through all their fingers. And I guarantee you people have been kicking themselves for that ever since, because he's been nothing but a great player, a great teammate, good citizen. Like, he's had no issues. He's been totally fine. And a lot of GMs whiffed on that. And I love when people buck the league and the system in that way and make GMs look stupid. I thought that. So good story for him. And I wish him continued success every day except for Monday.
Except for this coming Monday. Let's flip over a little bit to the other side of the ball and being able to look at this Chiefs offense. And I think that it is one of the most pick your poison teams in the NFL. And I'm certainly in the mindset that, I'm not, hey, Sammy Watkins is going to be out. That's great. They don't have Le'Veon Bell yet. Okay. They still have Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and Miko Hardman, and heck, the receiver who comes in for Sammy Watkins is Marcus Robinson. I wanted him this offseason.
Yes.
They still have Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Darrell Williams. And when you have a conductor at the podium there like Patrick Mahomes, who is all the upside and good things we see in Josh Allen with minimizing most of the downside. And it's just an embarrassment of riches. I think that the Raiders and, some of the Belichick schemes that they've showed, you have ways to slow down and make them frustrated. There's no stopping this offense. There's just not.
The worst part about it is not only is it an embarrassment of riches, because we've seen teams that have been put together with lots of talent. It's Andy Reid that has an embarrassment of riches, which just makes it worse. And that was my biggest fear with Le'Veon Bell. I know a lot of people don't love Bell. I like him a lot. I think he's a good player. I don't know about his values.
Both of us were legitimately excited for the Bills to add him.
Yeah, with Brian Dable. Like, I don't know that I like Bell with Adam Gase. Like, there's he's such a unique weapon that what scares me is him teaming up with Andy Reid, and Andy Reid being able to use him in so many different ways. And so we won't talk about Bella, but what Andy Reid is able to do and how he's able to attack defenses terrifies me. That has kept me up all week long, because the Bills defense is clearly struggling. I think that they might even try to overcompensate with some of the play calling. I think we will see Sean McDermott kind of get in there with Leslie Frazier a little bit more. I think they're going to try to work at how this defense is being called. I think Andy Reid's going to come in there and just kind of rip it all apart. I hate to say it. I do think he's going to just cause continued problems. This is not the week that I expect the defense to make fans happy with that. Everything's fixed. Yeah. I do think it'll happen. I think as the year goes on, we'll see the defense step up a little bit, but it's too much, in my opinion, with the talent that they have, that plethora of just fantastic talent. There's not many teams where I look at the offensive weapons and say, I want those to replace most of mine. Like Stephon Diggs, I don't want to replace, but I could swap out a couple of the Bills players easily, especially tight end position. I mean, probably the best one
offensively. George Kittle's
better than Gronk was. Kelsey's better than Gronk was in his prime, in my opinion. Not maybe as a blocker, but as a pass catching tight end.
Correct.
I really think he's the best I've seen.
Yeah, Pete Gronk is closer to like Kittle, where he's just good at everything.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce as a receiving weapon is the best receiving tight end that we've maybe ever seen. He's more athletic and faster than Tony Gonzalez was. He is a matchup nightmare. And it's going to be critical that we not only have Milano, but have a fully healthy Milano. I'm nervous that he's going to try to push and rush back. A pec injury is nothing to mess with.
Sure.
If we have him back and he's legit, and we have Tremaine Edmonds being able to roam the middle, and the Tremaine Edmonds who plays better next to Milano, if we have that, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are the kind of players who can help minimize the damage of Kelce. You're not going to stop him, but you can mitigate it. You can be careful with it. You talked about players you want to steal. Miko Hardman's the guy I use all the time, where I try to yell at people that, hey, everybody has a primary returner. Nobody has a primary returner who's also an offensive weapon, except for the Chiefs, who have Miko Hardman, who's a great returner and a nice offensive weapon. He's what would happen if we could make Isaiah McKenzie and Andre Roberts one person.
Yeah.
So that kind of weapon is there. Their rushing game hasn't been exceptional so far. I was really big on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's been all right. He hasn't been fantastic. There's a reason they went after Le'Veon Bell. So I don't think that there's a huge concern solely for the rushing game.
And the Bills defense has improved over the last couple of weeks against the run. So that kind of bakes into that too.
Yeah, their rush game success is when they split you out and you're on your heels from the passing game, and then they hit you with a 5-man box on a draw, and the guy runs for 15 yards because nobody was there to tackle him. Those are the things you have to be worried about with this team. And I looked at it, and honestly, the only flaw I can see is the interior offensive line. Both tackles are excellent. Their interior, they just lost Kelechi Osemele, and they're already
Tardif was out for COVID.
Correct. Laurent Duvernay Tardif actually is a doctor and was out working on
McGill.
Patients there. Yeah, McGill graduate. There you go. So Kelechi Osemele was a huge get for them. He had a really sad injury. If anybody saw the video, non-contact, blew out both knees at once. He's an older player. And, sadly, that is a big, rough and tumble guy who probably just had his last game from that standpoint. They already were playing Mike Remmers, who is not a good lineman. They now have Andrew Wiley stepping in there. Austin Ryder is okay as a center. I don't think he's special, but he's okay. But Wiley and Remmers is the one spot that I think you've had a lot of people talking here in the chat. I think the way to be able to stay in this game is you have to get pressure without sending a ton. You need to be able to drop 7 and even 8 sometimes. And you have to get home with the guys who are there. They have to be able to beat those guys up the middle. You're not going to beat Mitchell Schwartz. You're not going to be able to, push back there. Even Eric Fisher is playing pretty well right now. He's the #1 overall pick, but he's not playing that well, but he's playing well. I think we have to try to find a way to beat those guards to be able to make something happen here.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I do think you can send some pressure every once in a while. I think, people want to see Tremaine Edmonds on the outside because of his ability to rush the passer in college. I don't think he has that ability so much in the NFL. I've never seen him use a pass rush move before, so I don't think that's it.
He gets home on an A-gap blitz every once in a while.
And that's what I'm talking about. Bring him up on some A-gap blitz, get Milano back in coverage. I think there's some of that you can sneak in, and all you need to do is hit Mahomes a handful of times you're not going to get in his head, but hit him a handful of times to get him off his spot and get him moving out of the pocket. Because I think that we saw that with the Raiders. It's not that they sacked him so many times, it's that they were there so many times and getting him to move out and get out of his comfort zone and good coverage at the back end. What I'm concerned about with the Bills coverage is, even as good as Tre'Davious White is, something that he struggles with, and obviously Josh Norman's going to struggle with, is speed.
Oh.
And it's speed across the board.
We don't have a single player who can keep up with Hardman or Tyreek Hill. I know it's not the fastest 40 time. Tyreek Hill is the fastest football player I've ever seen on a football field.
Absolutely.
Right there with Deion Sanders. Like that kind of, he just, the rest of the guys on the football field are the best athletes in the world, and he moves faster than all of them.
And north, south, east, west,
all directions.
Yeah, all directions. He moves faster than everybody. But so they got speed across the board. And you talked about the help that the safeties would be able to bring with Kelsey. And I do think that's normally true, but I think you're going to need safety help everywhere to help protect these corners. So it presents so many stressing challenges. When we were talking about first starting Josh Allen, my argument was the whole idea an offensive coordinator needs is how to stress a defense. You don't have to just break a defense, just stress it and make them, find something to cover. It really is a pick your poison. They can stress you in so many ways, and it's going to cause the Bills a lot of stress. So I'm going to be interested to see what they do. Do they roll safety help to the speed on the outside, or do they try to take away Kelsey? Because you're going to have to pick one of them and hope that the other one can contain. It's going to be a long day. It's going to be really tough to contain a lot of that. Hopefully they think that they can really run on the Bills and go for a ground.
I've had a couple smart football people say that every time the Chiefs choose to run the ball, they are doing the defense a favor every single time. Every rush attempt is a gift. So I'll take all of them. We have a series of questions here that all go together. So Lone Wolf is saying, hey, the defensive ends need to keep the edges set. William is saying, so that 3 linemen and send a blitz up the middle. Where can the varying come from? Steve is saying, is this a game where we may say Epinesa up the middle like we saw Zoe in the past? It's going to be a lot of that. So I think you're going to see, Aaron brought up that A-gap blitz from either Milano or Edmonds. I don't think we see a lot where we send 5 or 6. Once or twice a game, maybe in a key moment where you try to catch them off guard. The key is you need 6 or 7 people in the area so that Mahomes doesn't know which 3 or 4 are coming. And then you need the guys who drop back into the zones to be able to do their job. They're not going to, you're not going to drop AJ Epinesa into a zone and have him man up on Travis Kelce. It's just cover your zone. Be a man in the way so that if the blitz gets home, you can get your hand on a ball or not be the reason that he passes to that area. We don't have the kind of athletic defensive ends who are going to chase down sideline to sideline with Mahomes. But he's not an exceptional athlete. He's the kind of guy that I'm okay if they send 3 linemen, Quentin Jefferson, Ed Oliver, and Mario Addison all crash down going left, and Jerry Hughes kind of floats back out and doesn't come and is kind of the spy because they're trying to flush him to that sideline. I'm okay with that, with Jerry Hughes in a foot race with Patrick Mahomes. Those are the kind of things they need to be creative with, and that every once in a while, hey, you drop Ed Oliver back into somewhere because you sent Matt Milano on a blitz. Hopefully they can find a way to be creative that way in getting into Mahomes' head where he doesn't know which guys are coming, and we create pressure without needing to send extra guys.
Yeah, and I think he has some mobility, right, Mahomes? I don't think he's got the type of mobility where you need to plan around that. There's too many other stresses that this team causes you. And Leslie Frazier said, even though this is like a primary zone coverage team, you have to be able to play man. You have to have it sprinkled in. You can't go out there and play zone 100% of the time. You have to.
And for fans, every zone ends up becoming man. Like every single zone, like at some point you have a guy in your area, you're covering him. Every zone eventually becomes man.
Well, but I do see, like, when he does rush, it is because they have so much speed and a lot of their stuff is deep that it just pulls defenders out and there's a free 10 yards.
Yeah. Remind me of Aaron Rodgers. Yes. Aaron Rodgers would do that too. He's athletic enough.
Yeah, he will pick up the first down if it's a clear path for him to get it. He's not going to Josh Allen you and try to juke middle linebackers or jump over, but like that's not his game. So I'm not worried about like setting up a spy to deal with Mahomes. I'd rather have that person in coverage on one of the many weapons that is going to be out there running around. So as far as contain, I do think that was frustrating for him. We were talking a little here offline. I think it was frustrating for fans to see that happen with Tannehill here this last week. I don't know that that's a consistent story from the Bills defense.
The one was an awful example, and it's burned in everybody's head. That has not been a season-long issue.
No, and I don't know that it's frustrating because of the result. I don't know that I blame Jerry Hughes for that type of play and the decision he makes. He's got a split second to make a decision on how he's going to rush a passer. And a lot of this is stuff that has been set up throughout the game. So he took a decision. I have to trust him as a pass rusher a little bit. He missed the spot. The quarterback got out. He broke contain. You really don't want your defensive ends totally containing at all times because that takes away an entire array of moves that they can make on the offensive tackle, right? Like you don't want them just primarily contained. That's not an aggressive pass rush. I think if Bills fans saw that, then they would get frustrated that even more that there isn't an ability to hit home or get pressures on a quarterback. I think there's more pressures than it appears. I think that pressures are a very weird thing that when you're watching the broadcast, it doesn't always look like it counts as a pressure. We obviously want to hit home.
Sometimes it's even frustrating when you see them not get home and you see it as a negative when really it probably forced a worse throw than what it would have been.
Exactly. And there's so many things baked into it. The pressure is great, but if the coverage is bad, like if AJ Brown stiff arms Taron Johnson 10 yards away and he's wide open, doesn't matter what kind of pressure you're getting, the guy's still open, he's going to catch a ball. It's going to look like a negative play for your defense. So there's so many things sort of in that whole getting pressure on a quarterback and interrupting a quarterback. It really is a 11 guy job, and we just haven't lined it up for the Bills right now. But in terms of containment, it's not something I'm necessarily worried about, where I'm sure they're stressing it in practice and working on those fundamentals, but I don't want to see them become a defense that just totally contains on the outside. I want those guys rushing the passer, and you're gonna lose containment sometimes when that happens.
Yeah, and it's something where I'm hopeful that they're able to be creative. I'm hopeful that they're able to be aggressive and make some plays. And I think there's, an important part of being able to make a play here or there. We're not going to stop this team. We're not going to slow them down to a crawl. It's just making enough plays that the offense can outscore them. That's the key.
There's one thing I want to touch on. I love Ron. I love you very much. I've seen a lot of this in my Twitter mentions this week about both Addison and Jefferson, and a lot of people calling for missing Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson. I couldn't disagree more. I think they've actually both been improvements over those two players. Mm-hmm. It might not show up like box score wise. It actually does show up box score that they are an improvement of those players, but I don't know that fans are getting the box score
as an example,
they want.
Addison has 14 pressures, 10 hurries, and 2 sacks. That's that's actually more than Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson combined right now through 5 games.
Yeah, and better than they were doing last year at this time. I think they're higher graded. I think that they were producing more than those two were in their first 5 games. So I'm totally happy. I actually think that that's probably the 2 players on the defensive line that I'm happiest with here so far this year. I'm disappointed in Jerry Hughes, even though he's grading out well. Yeah. And I want him to get home. I think
Vernon Butler hasn't done much.
Vernon Butler hasn't done much. Yeah. I hope Anthony Romeo is listening, because I do love Trent Murphy. I think he's a good player. He's disappointed me a couple weeks this season. He hasn't done the things that I do expect him to do. So there's other players on the defensive line that I'm willing to kind of attack, but the new additions aren't it for me. I think that them being new additions, we heard Leslie Frazier talk about some of the games that defensive line trying to play haven't quite lined up yet. I don't know that everybody's on the page, which will come with time. So I can give you maybe concede some of that because there's new additions that might be impacting performance of the unit as a whole. But as far as those individual players, I'm very happy with them.
Yeah. We've both been critical of Harrison Phillips with good reason. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's not healthy and not back yet. Ed Oliver is another good example where Ed Oliver has not played up to the expectations that we listed. He's actually been one of the, he's ranked reasonably well among the interior defensive linemen. He's doing productive things, 10 pressures, 6 hurries, and a sack. That's pretty good for interior. People were expecting him to be a game-wrecking presence, and he hasn't done that. So he's been our best interior defensive lineman. It just hasn't been the game-wrecking presence that we were hoping he was going to take this mon step from year 2. So I'm still cautiously optimistic for Ed Oliver. I think that he's playing way better than he did at the beginning of last year. He's playing as well as he did.
He's not playing as good as he did at the end.
Correct.
Some of the most impressive things I've seen from Ed Oliver will be, you look at his size, and he'll take on a double team and stand his ground. And that's not sexy. It doesn't show up anywhere. It's almost like the opposite of what Joe Thomas was talking about, which you brought up with offensive linemen. Like, you want to see them making the not sexy plays, the plays that don't stand out. Ed Oliver standing up 2 offensive linemen on his own and just taking that and not giving up his gap is probably more incredible and more of an exceptional play than we really realize in the moment. Nobody's going to talk about it. No one's going to see it, but I've seen it a handful of times now. I'd say he gets quite a bit of double teams. For a guy his size in the interior line to do that and stand up, that alone makes me excited for the potential of what he can do when he starts ripping through that and causing some problems. And again, I do think it's going to come. Some explosive plays will come for him too. And just haven't been there yet.
So our last thing here on the defense before we switch over to the Bills offense against the Chiefs D, Lone Wolf asks, who is our best one tech? We don't have anyone that I would describe as best. I don't think we have anyone who's even average at one tech. For all the crap that Star Lotulelei got, his ability to consistently hold his gap, take on double teams, keep Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds clean, we don't have anybody who does it well right now. Harrison Phillips is getting blown off the ball more snaps that he's not. Ed Oliver, Quentin Jefferson are trying to do that. They're doing okay. Neither of them, they're both better as a penetrating 3-tech. I know Vernon Butler is built like a 1-tech. He's a 3-tech too, and that he's trying to help in that role, but it's just not what any of them do. So I that is an area I joked about Snacks Harrison and some other players like that. I think 1-tech is actually a sneaky need on this team to be able to have a guy who can hold the point of attack and keep the linebackers clean. It's been tough. It's been tough to be able to do that. So I think like 5 people just wrote about getting Quinn and Williams in the chat. So the Jets are pretty dumb. I don't think they're that dumb.
I do think so. When the whole COVID thing, and we saw the Patriots losing players to the COVID list at the beginning of the season, everyone got worried about Trey, which obviously I was too. But I think a lot of fans slept on how big of a loss
they celebrated.
They celebrated Star, yeah. But I think that in EJ Gaines, I think we look at where there's a lot of talk in the chat tonight about Taron Johnson, and I could spend too much time and ruin the show talking about Taron Johnson. It wouldn't be fun for any of us. But I think a huge loss that isn't a sexy, they're not sexy players, but Star and Gaines, bring those guys into this defense, and that changes a lot of the problems that we've been seeing and dealing with right now. So the COVID loss was real for the Buffalo Bills, even though they're not sexy names. It definitely impacted this defense and the continuity and what they're going to be able to do because they haven't replaced Star. I don't put that on Brandon Beane. A lot of people are frustrated that he didn't immediately replace Star Latulippe. There's not a ton of those guys in the NFL that are just out there available that are going to come in and make your team that much better. It just doesn't exist. I think it's going to be something they have to attack in the draft and offseason here this next year. They did a good job of it when they didn't have Star, of going after and attacking. So I expect Brandon Beane to do that next year.
And they'll be able to do that when they get to the point of needing to be able to add that. They'll either know that Star is ready to come back next year, or, I don't think retirement's out of the question. But if he comes back, they'll do that. There are 1-techs available in free agency. There are not 1-techs available August 15th. There's just not that many humans on the earth who can hold 2 NFL offensive linemen at bay and keep them from coming. There's just not that many guys who can do that. There's a reason that Snacks Harrison hasn't played yet, and it's something where, I don't know exactly what he's ready for, if he's going to play, but there's a reason he's still only on a practice squad and trying to ease his way back. And I've had plenty of people share that he wasn't up to snuff last year. So we'll see where that goes. But if that guy was available, I think they would have done it.
Yeah.
Let's flip over to the other side of the ball here. I know you
some numbers.
Yeah, you talked about it. Our friends over at West Her, if you're looking for a vehicle, make sure you're looking at our friends at West Her Automotive Group all over Western New York. When you get ready to make that purchase, you got to get down to numbers. You got to talk through it and figure out what it's going to cost. What are some numbers that stuck out to you this week, Aaron?
Yeah, actually, Adam, who's in our Slack channel, brought it up in the chat earlier about DVOA and talked about the Chiefs defense, and something that stood out to me. So again, all these stats, I use them a lot. I use PFF as much as I dunk on them on Twitter. I use PFF. I use Football Outsiders as much as I get on Aaron Schatz. I do use them. I use DVOA. But what I do is I kind of write it all down, put it next to me while I'm watching the film, and then I go kind of back and see if that it matches. And really, so far this year, the one thing that has stood out to me the most as DVOA is wrong here is Kansas City Chiefs. They have ranked as the second best pass defense DVOA in the NFL. I can't see it. It's not something that pops out to me on film. And another stat we also look at is toxic differential. Right now, according to Sharp Football Stats, they are tied with the Bills at 14th, which is middle of the road in the league of giving up the most explosive passing plays. So I have a hard time seeing how you can be kind of where the Bills are, which has been a struggle this year. It's been a total kind of anomaly of a Sean McDermott defense to give up explosive passing plays. This is something we're not used to seeing, that it can be that bad equally for the Kansas City Chiefs, but that they can be the number 2 passing defense. And it's not even just that aside. I see teams like the Jaguars being able to easily move the ball on them in the passing game, or not the Jaguars, the San Diego Chargers easily move the ball against them the other week. And I like what Herbert's done. I do. But I think that's
sneaky. He's got a lot of Josh Allen to him. I think Justin Herbert has a fair amount of Josh Allen to him.
but he's still got a lot of rookie Josh Allen to him too.
Correct.
Like some of the decisions he makes. And so they're getting some turnovers. I see that. I don't know how much that influences DVOA or not, but I saw that, stands out to me. I want to get your take. I know you've watched a ton of Chiefs. Do you think that their pass defense something that scares you? Is the second best in the NFL?
I genuinely don't understand it. Like I don't know. And I think some of their numbers are deceiving because they've actually only given up a pretty consistent amount. Is 20, 20, 20, and 10 through the first 4 games. So I get where some of the numbers look good. Some of them are buoyed by some turnovers. Some, when you get out, they built the defense exactly how you want to when you have a lights out explosive offense, that they have Chris Jones, they have Frank Clark, they have guys who can come after you. They have an aggressive guy like Tyrann Mathieu who can blitz. And that when their team knows that, oh crap, they're getting ahead of us, we need to change up what we're doing, and then their defense gets to pin their ears back, it makes it a lot easier to play defense. So I get what they're doing, but it's weird to see some of the rankings that I just don't see it on tape. And I'm actually going to take this opportunity to make a point about the Bills defense. The whole point of what Aaron and I just talked about needs to reinforce to everyone. All defense in the NFL in 2020 is bad. All of it. There is no good defense. I think the Steelers have had a couple moments. The Colts have had a couple moments. There's been some, but relative to normal levels, where we used to have just some killer defenses and then other side of the coin, the way that they are letting offensive linemen hold, it's really hard to get home. That's why you see some of the rankings that you do for the Bills where it doesn't look that bad, or the Bills are like, oh my gosh, the Bills defense is terrible. They're like 17th in yards. They're like 22nd in points. They're not the worst defense in the league because all of the defenses are playing below their previous standards. So it's not horrible. Everybody's not scoring, 70 points a game. But there's a material step back from what we've seen the last couple of years. And it's going to be interesting to see, does that stay consistent? Do they keep swallowing the whistle and letting offensive linemen hold? If they do, is it going to be more and more of these teams dropping 7 and 8 guys into coverage and just making a guy beat them because you're not going to be able to get home anyways if they let them hold? I'm really curious how this plays out as the year goes.
Yeah, I do agree that defenses around the league are struggling. We're seeing fantasy. I'm not a huge fantasy player, but we're seeing record-breaking, shattering fantasy performances from people that correlates with, offenses having those type of performances. And granted, I'm not here saying that Kansas City is a bad pass defense, but I look at Buffalo's pass defense DVOA is 24th, and granted, some of that has some small there's still a little bit of small sample size baked into that. The Rams game is a really tough one on that passing defense and that comeback that skews those numbers quite a bit. So I'm not mad that the Bills are ranked 24th, but I am a little mad because when I watch the film, it just doesn't add up that the Chiefs are that much better than the Bills have been this year. They've gotten more turnovers. I don't know that they've been that much better in coverage than the Bills. So it just stood out to me. Again, I'm not saying Kansas City is a bad passing defense. I just don't think they're the top 2 in the NFL, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm watching the film wrong. So if I am, hit up our YouTube comments and tell me I'm an idiot, but I don't
Well, I mean, if you look at it, the Chiefs have given up 1,914 yards. The Bills have given up 1,859 yards, 383 yards a game to 371 yards a game, yet they're ranked way higher than us. I don't know.
PFF has them graded I think maybe like right where the Bills are. So the PFF grades, DVOA, something's not matching up. So I want to dig a little bit deeper into why DVOA is so high. So if any of you, I'm not going to call you stat nerds, but my friends that enjoy analytics want to get in a conversation with me and explain why that DVOA seems to be so off to both of us, I would love to hear it because I do want to learn what makes these stats move throughout the year a little bit more. And so I'd love an explanation if anybody's got one.
Well, and I'll bring up a point that some of the analytics crowd has made this point before, that no one is advocating that a team comes out and passes 100% of the time and that you should never run, because there are times where you absolutely should. If you have a light box, you can have really good run game. If you can get a team spread out and then hit them with that, you should. What I've talked to, so some people that are reasonable in the analytics community and want to have good discussions, I've talked with a couple of them. They said it's not that they want teams to pass 100% of the time. It's that genuinely they think the statistics and the results and how they drive, there should be teams who do 80-20. And that's what they think, is that you should be able to pass 80% of the time and rushing 20% of the time, you'd be better and would score more points doing that. And when they look at that, one item that you see is being bad at run defense in their mind doesn't matter, because you almost want to entice the other team to run the ball at you because running is worse than passing. So I've had somebody try to make that point to me that it's almost a good thing that the Chiefs have a bad rushing defense, because if they're so good at passing and the other team wants to try to run the ball at them, every time you trade one of your runs for one of our passes, you lose. And then they're almost dangling a carrot, daring them to run the ball, because every time you try to run the ball, it's helping us because we're going to score faster than you and you're not going to be able to sustain it. So I don't know that I agree with it. I don't know that I fully grasp where it is, but I get the idea. I get
it's like in basketball, the teams, when three-point shootings first came out, the teams that were setting records and the ability to hit threes were, we'll let you take twos all day because we're going to come down and hit you with a three every time. If we miss a couple, we'll catch up. We're going to hit a few more threes later. So
and you saw that with the Rockets in there, that there's been issues when they get to the top. So I think that there's still, it's not perfect, but I get it. Like some of it really does work.
I understand the analytics thing. I do believe, and I don't have the analytics and data support. I do believe the NFL changes come playoff football, just like basketball changes come playoff basketball. The game slows down. It does become a more of a trenches thing. So I think, that'll get you the first seed. Obviously, we saw with Kansas City, they get to the Super Bowl, but they're not passing 80% of the time either. But the teams that do pass more do have success in the NFL. But I think when it comes down to the playoffs, you still have to be able to establish the line of scrimmage and run the ball. So, I'm not super worried about either rush defense. Again, my whole point is I don't think they're a number 2 passing attack. And I think that the Bills are going to drop them down a little bit this week. I think the Bills will have success against this number 2 ranked passing defense in the NFL.
I think we're going to hurt that ranking. I feel confident we're going to hurt that ranking. So James makes a good point here that I've seen thrown around here, and Jay Feely said it on our game Tuesday night about the rule of 53. So I'm going to take this chance to give a shout out to somebody who doesn't pay us to say nice things about them. Both Aaron and I love Warren Sharp and his website, Sharp Football Stats. He is one of the smartest minds in football. He is actually legitimately consulted from NFL teams who pay him for his analytics. He runs a gambling syndicate in Las Vegas that genuinely looks for advantages against the books and bets huge sums of money. That's his whole job, is being a consultant from NFL teams and a professional gambler. For anybody who doesn't know, he recently joined The Ringer and is doing that. In addition to his other things, he's on a show on Wednesdays and Fridays. It's one of my favorite ones to listen to. And on today's show from this past Wednesday, he talked about that rule of 53, and it gave a really good example of correlation versus causation. And the simplest way I can explain it is that rule of 53 is reverse hindsight stuff, in the same way that when people talk about, the most rush attempts in the fourth quarter wins. No. Teams that are winning often run the ball in the fourth quarter because they're milking the clock. Though that's the difference. It's not that, it's the fourth quarter, we better hurry up and start giving handoffs, because if we have the most rush attempts in the fourth quarter, it means we're going to win. No, teams that are winning often run the ball. So that rule of 53 is exactly that way. It's the idea that rush attempts plus completions getting to 53 is a winning scenario. And it's true, but it's not a contest. And the way that he brought that up is, if it was, you would just hand the ball off every single play to start the game and run short, completion percentage screens to hurry up and get to 53 and say, look, we got to 53, we win. it's that if you're moving the sticks and you're getting first downs, you're probably going to have enough conversions that it ends up with enough completions and attempts to get to 53, but it's because you played good offense and you converted things. So let's talk numbers.
It's more of a hindsight stat
yes.
than a
yes.
let's attack this way stat.
Correct. So it's not a way you make your game plan, but it is a good indicator after the fact that, hey, we were successful and the things that we did to score points led to more conversion. So it's a good discussion to be able to look at that kind of thing. So it's not that it's a bad thing. It's just it's not quite as simple. So you check that show out. Really, really well done. And Warren Sharp's site, Aaron and I both play around in there. He has a good toxic differential calculator on there that we both like.
Let's talk about some points.
Yeah, let's do it.
What kind of points do you want to talk about here? What are you thinking, man? You usually have me go first, so I want to put you on the spot. What's your Monday evening 5 to 8 looking like this week?
So I'm scared. I'm nervous. I don't like it. I liked it better when they were on a short week and coming in. I don't think there's a big difference now, but it's enough that it makes me a little bit nervous. I like it that Sammy Watkins is out. I like it that our defense is getting healthier. I absolutely think we can hang with these guys. I absolutely think we can put up points. I can't find it in me that I think we're going to beat Patrick Mahomes just yet. I don't think that the Chiefs are going to drop 2 games in a row. I think it's going to be an awesome shootout back and forth. I think they get us something crazy like 42-38. I think there's going to be a ton of points. I think both defenses are going to struggle to keep up. And I don't think we're quite ready to keep up with this offense just yet. And I'd rather pick them to beat them in the playoffs.
Sure. I do think when you look at teams that play each other in the regular season, if there was a reason to lose this game, it's that we want to beat them later. I agree with you. This is one that on the schedule I never saw as a win. And I don't know, as good as the offense has been, I don't know that anything has changed my mind of what kind of game it's going to be. If anything, the defense not performing to what I expected it to do makes it a little worse. It's tough film to watch. This is a tough game to get ready for. It's pretty defeating, especially coming off of that Titans defeating loss, which, again, I don't think it was as bad of a loss as the point differential says, but it's still a tough loss. Yeah. And now you're going back into the national spotlight against the best team in the NFL, in my opinion, and the most difficult team to stop. I don't think being at home matters, especially without a crowd. I do think it's going to be a tough one. I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as you do. I have it as 31-27 Chiefs, but I think the Bills score late. I think that the Chiefs pretty much have it in hand, and the Bills get a late score from Josh Allen to make it look a little closer than the game is. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the Bills dropping 2 in a row here. I liked the 4-1 start that they've got. I like a 4-2 start. I like their odds against pretty much the rest of the run that they have. I like the Seahawks. I'm not nearly as scared of the Seahawks as I am here at the Chiefs. I like the Steelers, not as scared. You know what I mean? I think that they can do good things against the Patriots. So they have some tough games still coming up, but this one's the worst, in my opinion. It's always been the worst, and it's still the worst here a couple days before the game. So I can't pick them to win. You will see me pick the Bills to win more times than not, but it ain't going to be this week. And hopefully we come back here Monday night and we're both talking about how wrong we were.
Cannot wait to be wrong.
Idiots we've been.
It's very excited to be wrong. And it's something that I do want to say it very clearly. We can win this game.
Absolutely.
The Bills are absolutely capable of winning this game. There were games last year and the year before where it was going to take something pretty special. I think if these two teams played 10 times, the Chiefs probably win 6 or 7. They're not winning 9 out of 10. They're not winning 10 out of 10. The Bills can beat this team. I think the Chiefs would beat the Bills more than the Bills would beat the Chiefs, and that's why they won the Super Bowl last year and why they're the heavy favorite to do so again.
They're ahead in their process than where we are, and that's okay.
They have more weapons. They've added more pieces. They're in that development. They handed out their huge contract to their quarterback. They're where we want to get to, and I think that they're within reach. Like that is within range of being possible of what they want to do. And this is the year where we're going to find that out. And I think you heard Patrick Mahomes talk about that with Josh Allen, that they know this is a guy. He knows that Josh Allen is a guy that they're going to be playing each other for a long time to come, and that's really cool to hear.
Absolutely. And I do think there's one last thing I want to talk about here. It's this game, we'll see if the defense is ready to be great. I don't agree with that. I think that the defense is going to struggle, even if they play well. Defenses that have played well against everybody said last week the Raiders put together a way to beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs still scored 32.
They scored 32 points. They didn't figure anything out.
And the Raiders played well.
And they were one play away from getting that final possession. And if they didn't get that final third down stop, Patrick Mahomes would have got the ball and driven down the field again and scored.
Most likely. And so I don't think that this is going to be a good day for the defense, even if they play better than they've had. And I don't know that this defense will be a great defense this year or not. But I don't know that they need them to be. But I wouldn't be relying on that in this game, because I think you'll have a disappointing Monday evening if you're looking for the defense to really rebound.
Yeah. So, big thank you to our sponsors. We got Uncle Jumbo's up behind me, T-Shirt University, our friends down at West Her. Make sure you're checking out all of them and showing them some love. Help us out. Give us a rating. Give us a review. Give us a like. Give us a share. Tell somebody else about the show. Aaron, where can the good people find you?
You can find me at Aaron Quinn 716. Good sir.
You guys can find me at Greg Tompsett, GregTompsett, having fun with Bills fans, being able to enjoy ourselves. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.